All right, guys, in this lecture, we're gonna jump into an editing program so I can show you what many of the usual features look like. I'm gonna go into Adobe Premiere, and some of you may decide to use this one specifically, some of you won't, but it's a powerful piece of software, and it's really a great example to show you what most editing programs are like. So for the next X amount of minutes, we're gonna go into Adobe Premiere as if we never used it before and get oriented with what you need to care about. There's a lot of sections you don't need to know about, so we're only gonna focus on how to get in and get stuff done. If you guys already know how to use Premiere, for the love of God, skip this lecture. Also, if you're one of those people that complains when you watch a software tutorial in a course because you think a course shouldn't cover software tutorials, in that case, you can also skip it. And in general, guys, you can just go to YouTube, and YouTube has some really good tutorials on how to use Premiere. The difference is going to be that they're going to be much, much longer, more in depth, and they're going to focus on a lot of things that like pro video editors need, but not something like what we need. Anyway, so here we go. Let's just jump in, and this is what it looks like. Okay, get used to this, because, well, if you're going to use it, you're going to stare at this for hours. So the first thing you generally want to do is create a new project. Okay, so when you open a new project in Adobe Premiere, this window is going to come up where you can type in a name and potentially change some of these options. But generally, I would just say just leave them as they are for now. We don't have to worry about them yet, and frankly, I don't even know what some of these mean. Let's just jump right in, and when the new project opens up, you'll see a whole bunch of windows around the workspace. Now, we'll discuss them as we go through this. If you guys are using a different version of Premiere, like CS6, CS5, or even CS4, I don't know how you installed it, but you might have it, it could look slightly different. Adobe has this funny thing where for some reason every year they decide to move all their features around in a big circle, just I think to piss people off who make tutorials. That's the only reason I can think of it. They do it with Photoshop all the time. They just take a feature and then every year they move it around somewhere else. It's in this tab or this over here, or now it's a shortcut. Anyway, to get us started, I've got a few sample videos that Premiere actually provided, so we'll just use those as part of an example video project. So the first thing you want to do when you start up a video project is get your video clips into the project, and specifically a section called the media bin. Now the easiest way to do this is open your Finder on the Mac or Explorer on your PC and find the files that you want to put in there, and then just click and drag them into the lower left-hand section of Premiere. That's the media bin, and that will add those clips to your project. So here we have 3 video files that we're going to use in this example. Let's just click one and drag it over the timeline, which is over here to the right. Now the timeline is really the main area where you're going to be doing the editing of your video. The timeline is separated into video and audio tracks, which you can see here labeled with V and A, V1 and A1, or video 1 and audio 1. And when we drag the video clip onto it, well, it splits the video and the audio from the clip apart, and they put them into corresponding tracks for you. The timeline is a timeline, right? So if you look at the left part of the timeline, the very far left, well, that's 0 seconds. And as you move right, that's 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, all the way up to however long your video is going to be. So by placing video clips here, that's how you can decide what shows at what time, in what order, and what sequence. All right, so here on the timeline, you're gonna see a vertical blue line at the beginning, and if you click and drag it around, you'll see what's going on at that particular point in the video clip. Now that blue line is called the playhead, and you'll position that where you want to make edits and the other cuts on your timeline. I, as unsophisticated as I am, will call it the scrubber, but I know that's not technically true, but I just like to call it a scrubber because I think scrubber is a funny word. You can drag it around and move it with the arrow keys, or you can use keyboard shortcuts in Premiere. Specifically, the keys J, K, and L will allow you to shuttle through the video that's on the timeline. Now, I don't obviously use shortcuts because I have 5 fingers, so it kind of makes it hard. But for 10-fingered friends, well, this actually is quite useful. It'll save you actually an enormous amount of time, because a lot of times you'll be doing the same redundant task over and over and over and over again, whereas clicking it, right-clicking, then doing whatever you want with a mouse just adds seconds to every time you do it, and over the long term, it can actually add hours to your life. Anyway, you can try it out yourself and see how it works. Now, J goes reverse and L goes forward, and then K will stop. Okay, so now that we have a video clip on the timeline, let's actually click it and go to the upper left-hand corner and click on Effect Controls. Now, this is basically a properties window that shows information about what's selected. Here you can see the size and other information about the video itself, and there are places where you can make changes to it if you want to. For example, if you explore some of the items in the effects control window, one of those attributes in there is called rotation. Now, rotation obviously refers to the video itself and whether it's rotated in degrees. If you change the rotation to say 90 degrees, well, look at our image, you'll see it change in the screen on the right, so now the video is rotated. And if you shuttle back and forth with the playhead, you'll see that the entire clip is now rotated. So That's how you make a change. But if you wanted to reset that, then just go over to where the rotation is and click on the circular arrow on the right, and that will usually reset it to the original value. Okay, there you go. Now we're back to non-crazy land. Now there are plenty of effects that Premiere has, and if you go up to the top along this horizontal navigation bar, you'll see effects as one of those buttons. If you click it, a new window will appear on the right. Now one of the folders there is a video effects, and inside there you've got things like color correction and items inside that like brightness and contrast. Now, if you've ever edited a photo in Instagram or pretty much any other app, a lot of these will look familiar to you. So you could just grab one of these effects and then drag it over onto the clip on the timeline to apply the clip, and then you have to change the attributes however you want. Now keep that in mind, that's kind of tricky, but when you want an effect, you grab it and you throw it on the clip that you want the effect to be applied to. So let's click and drag brightness and contrast and put it right here on the video clip, and there you go, now it's applied. If we go over to the effects window, we can now start making changes, change the brightness, change the contrast, do whatever we want. Grab the playhead and shuttle back and forth to see what it looks like. If we decide we don't like what we've done, well, we can hit that reset button again, or we can disable the effect by clicking that FX button on the left. Now, FX stands for special effects. I don't actually know what the F stands for, but it's basically what it means, like special effects. Another way to apply effects is to do them using what are called keyframes. Now, keyframes are specific points that you can set within a video clip to tell the editing program when to start and stop applying certain effects. For example, let's say we wanted to start a video clip by having it all blurry, and then a few seconds later into the clip, it clears up. It's actually a pretty common way to start videos. You'll see it on YouTube, the text is blurry, then it unblurs. So it's sort of like this dreaming, weird kind of effect that we're creating that allows the video to come into focus. So let's go over the effects folder, and under the blur folder, there's an effect called directional blur. Okay, let's click and drag that onto the clip on the timeline. Then over in the properties windows or effects windows, we can see that it's in there. Let's drag the playhead back to the beginning of the clip on the timeline. Then we'll go over to the effects window, and next to the blur length part of the effect, there's a little stopwatch icon. Now, if we click on that, you'll see it turns blue. Now, what that means is we just created a keyframe or a specific point in the video where you want the effect to begin. Now, the reason why it's called a keyframe is that your timeline is split up into frames. Every second, depending on how you recorded it, and depending on the settings you set up your project in, usually it's 24 frames per second. So if you make a frame a keyframe, that just basically means that the program now knows that in this frame, in the 23rd second or whatever, something happens, right? And then you let the computer know that, well, this keyframe is associated with a blur or something like that, so it knows to start the blur at this point. If you're having trouble with keyframes, guys, don't worry. I mean, honestly, these are the ones that you're just gonna struggle with until you eventually it clicks and it works, but unfortunately, like all the softwares use these. So let's click on that number next to the blue length and let's make it like 20. I don't know, that's like super blurry. So now let's drag the playhead 5 or 6 seconds into the video, go back to the special effects window, and now hit the reset button on the blur length. You'll see that the blur length is now set to 0. Now drag that playhead back and forth along the timeline. You'll see the effect in action going from very blurry at the beginning to completely clear where we set that second keyframe. Now, the way that worked was, right, we set at the very beginning, okay, we want it to be blurry, so we set a keyframe, okay, and the keyframe told it that, hey, in this frame, make it all blurry. And then we went to the end where we wanted to end it, and then we hit reset, which basically sets a second keyframe, but it's easy for us because we start and then just stop it. So then the computer knows, okay, the effect has to last over this length. Now, all right, so let me show you another feature that is what editing is all about, and that's how to make cuts and edits. Now, this is incredibly important. To the right of the media bin on the bottom, you'll see a vertical row of icons, and right next to it, the arrow is the one that's selected. But you'll also see that there's a razor blade icon. Can you guess what the razor blade does? Well, that's the Razer Tool, which is what you're gonna use to make slices or cuts within the video and audio tracks. I know they're just called slices and cuts or whatever, but really it just means that you're gonna split these videos in half or just, I don't know, so let's say 5 seconds in, you wanna change the video and play something else. Well, you'd have to cut it at 5 seconds and move the second portion of that clip somewhere else, then take the clip you wanted and throw it in. So let's drag a couple of other video clips onto the timeline here. Here's one, okay, I'll just put another one on as well. Now let's switch to the Razer Tool and start making some cuts. Let's go most of the way into the first clip, and right about, I don't know, here we'll make a cut. Okay, when we click there, you'll see that the video and audio clip after the cut has been highlighted. If we switch to the pointer tool or the selection tool, over here back where we had the Razer icon, and we right click on that part of the clip, well, then there's a whole bunch of options, but one of them is gonna be called Ripple Delete. Now, if you wanna just delete a clip, what do? You click it and you hit delete. Now, Ripple Delete is just a little bit different, and it is a very common kind of tool that video editors use. By choosing Ripple Delete, it's gonna delete the clip that's highlighted and then move everything else after it back so that there's no gap in the timeline. This is a great feature when you're trying to make edits quickly. So if we hit Ripple Delete here, as opposed to just regular delete, well, the clip goes away, and then the rest of the clips smush back against the first one. Otherwise, we hit delete, well, it'd just leave a big blank space, and then we have to grab all the other ones and slide them over back into place. Now, right now, this obviously doesn't look like a big problem, but when you have lots of things on your timeline, oh, it can be a pain in the ass, because what ends up happening is you'll leave a big gap, and then you'll try to scoot them, but then what ends up happening is you accidentally move them out of sequence, or you'll move them out of sync, which you had established before with the other clips. The next thing I want to show you here is how to apply a transition. Now, a transition could be like a crossfade or a dissolve or a slide in, slide out, or some kind of way to get from one shot to the next without just having it be a simple, it's now scene one, oh, now it's scene two. One way to apply a transition is to right click on the timeline where the cut has been made or in between two clips and a transition. Now keep this in mind, you have to have two clips to have a transition. If you want to have a transition inside of one clip, well, you have to cut it and then apply the transition right at where those two blocks meet. Otherwise, the computer doesn't know what to transition from and then to, so it really wouldn't make any sense. So for Premiere, we'll probably use the cross dissolve, and you'll see what this basically looks like. Cross dissolve just means it takes one image and slowly dissolves, and as it dissolves, then the second image starts bubbling up. Now, you can change any of the attributes on this, like how long the transition lasts or when it begins and ends. If you want to change the transition that's there, well, you can go over to Video Transitions in the folder on the right, grab one that you like, and drag it over on top of the timeline. For example, let's grab this center split effect from the slide folder. If we drive that over and then shuttle back and forth with the playhead, we'll see what the effect actually looks like when you apply it to the clips on the timeline. Okay, pretty cool. Now you could spend 20 minutes just playing with all the transitions they have to pick which ones you like. Personally, I like to use subtle transitions. There's a lot of ones on there that have a lot of motion, like things that crash in and, you know, I don't know. What ends up happening is they're just too cheesy. And a lot of times if you use too like motion specific transitions, then people can actually kind of get seasick. I don't know if you've seen videos that have too many transitions. It actually can kind of give you a headache. So personally, I like to stick to simple stuff unless for some reason having a more animated version adds some value. Anyway, yeah, I mean, just keep it simple unless for some reason you can get away with a fancy one. Anyway, one more basic thing you should know about this is how to zoom in and out of your project. And specifically on the timeline. So there's a horizontal bar with a couple of circles along the bottom here. If you click and drag on the right one, you'll see the magnification of the project increase and decrease. If you're into keyboard shortcuts, you can also hit the plus and minus buttons in the upper right-hand corner of your keyboard to do the exact same thing. Okay, once you've got your video edited and ready to go, you'll want to export the video file. So go up to the File menu, go down to Export, and then select your media. Now, when you want to actually make a video, you have to export it, because right now it's in a goofy format, and there's no video player that can play it. If you just go to Save, what that does, it saves your project, right? And so Premiere can open the project, and you go right back to editing like you would. But if you export, it takes all of your clips, all of your layers, and smushes them together into one video file. That's generally what you use when you're gonna upload this to YouTube or wherever you're sending your media. Anyway, so go back to that, and when you export, then you select your media. So that's gonna bring up a window that shows you what the video will look like once it has been rendered. Or basically what rendered means is all the effects have been generated by the program. See, the program is displaying clips, but it's also creating its own effects and graphics and whatever. And it takes time for it to actually go through and make all those graphics. Now, one thing it's helpful to double check and, if necessary, change the name of the file and the destination where the file will be saved. You can do this over on the right just by clicking the file name and then sending the information about the right directory and the right file name. The other thing that might come in handy is if you're going to be publishing straight to a social media platform of some kind like YouTube or even Facebook, you can actually just go down to Publish tab here and log into your platform of choice and then enter any specific settings for this video. So in that case, when you export the video, it'll just go directly to Facebook and post, or directly to Twitter and post. It saves you time, but I don't understand why people use this feature, to be honest, because I personally just export it and then check that everything came out right. If you send it directly to Facebook, then you could have render errors. You could totally have forgotten to remove something at the end of your clip or something like that. there's no turning back. But if you really want to save time, you're constantly publishing really short stuff to social media, well, then go for it. Anyway, when you're ready, hit export and the program will begin to render the video and export it. Now, depending on your computer and the hardware specifications you have, this could take a really short time or a really long time. The longer your video is, the more effects you have in it, well, the longer it's just gonna take to render. But once it's done, voila, there you go, you're good to go. All right, guys, that's it for now. Most of the editing programs out there are a lot like this. Things might be found in different places, but generally the experience will be the same. I honestly encourage you to download a demo of Premiere or any other editing program to give it a try for yourself. They all have timelines, they all have effects. You pretty much all put the effects on the timelines the same way. You cut your clips on the timeline pretty much the same way. You stack your clips on top of each other the same way. You export and you save and all that stuff pretty much the same way. Keyframes work the same way as well, but the buttons will be, somewhere else. Anyway, guys, all right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.